Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar, which is our Ignite Roundup, so Ignite of 2024. This is our fireside chat, so we're doing something slightly different today where we've got our experts that have been firsthand to Microsoft Ignite last week, and we've got them here today basically giving their summary of the most important announcements, their take on it, and what they think are going to come further down the line. So quick introduction, my name is Dougie Wood. I'm a Microsoft MVP here at Valto. I'm going to be joined today by Rob Thomas, who's our head of modern workplace at Valto, and Jay, who's our head of business applications as well. So I'm just going to jump back to the screen here. So the way that I'm going to be kind of run today is we're going to be asking a few different questions that I've got about Ignite, but also if you have any of your own questions as well, there is actually a Q&A feature across the top of the screen. If you click on that, you can drop your questions in there, and periodically I'm going to be going in there and taking a little look at any of those questions, and we can ask those to the guys here as we're going through. So first question I just want to ask to Rob. Are there any significant security challenges businesses are facing when implementing AI solutions like Microsoft Copilot?
Thanks, Dougie, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so I guess probably one of the main challenges I would see is like sort of shadow IT and non-sanctioned AI services. So again, this is something that's kind of not really different in the IT cloud-driven world, but obviously with an emphasis on AI. I think over 60% of employees are using some form of AI in their daily workflows. There's just been a massive surge in these AI tools that have led to sort of more people accidentally, sharing confidential data, or maybe even like malicious actors trying to exploit the data for their personal gain. And yeah, I think it's like 63% of data breaches that occur stem from insiders, obviously, which is leading to organizations, really intensifying their data security. And then sort of, I think detecting data breaches and insider risks in real time is probably another challenge for organizations that we've seen as well. And just being able to proactively identify and remediate attack paths, that pose risk to the data assets a company has. But obviously there's been huge announcements, into the Ignite this time around, especially in the Purview stack. This was, the product of Ignite for me. So hopefully, this is going to solve a lot of those challenges.
Brilliant. We'll definitely get into a bit more of that as we kind of go through this session. I know security has been a massive thing that with all of this Copilot stuff and AI sort of generation, I think people start to catch up now and start to actually think about this isn't just fantasy anymore. This is stuff people are actually implementing, and what are the security implications and things like that, which are coming down the road.
Yeah, definitely. And we don't want to have like the blockers, and Microsoft want people to to be able to adopt this brilliant technology as quick as possible. So
exactly,
remediating these issues is definitely going to help.
Definitely. So question for you, Jay. To me, I think that one of the biggest announcements of Ignite has been Copilot Agents. That's like groundbreaking stuff. So do Copilot Agents differ significantly from the core Copilot features that have been introduced earlier this year?
Yeah, I think one of the things that me and Rob were talking about when we were there is this time last year, Copilot, it was kind of the AI revolution, right? It was a big bang. It was the announcement of everything, and it was all brand new, and it's going to change this, it's going to change that, it's going to change the other. I think the advent of agents really is the evolution of that revolution. Essentially, it's the next step of what's coming down the line for kind of what we're going to be doing with Copilot. And one of the best ways of kind of really understanding what an agent was really best described to us, rather than, I've got a Copilot that does X, Y, Z, was define your agent as a job role, define that as the responsibility of, being the facilitator, or being, whatever it might well need to be within your organization to fulfill a role and a purpose, rather than just kind of a bit of code or a little chatbot that sits over there and answers questions. It was really thinking about these in more holistic ways, rather than just how we potentially would have viewed a Copilot 12 months ago. And I think that was kind of a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think Copilot Agents is something that's it's totally different than what we've kind of seen so far from Copilot as being Copilot as being something that people are kind of using kind of and almost like coming up with their own kind of idea of how they're interrogating information and things like that. Was these announcements with Copilot Agents, especially I think some of the different flavors of them, like the project management type of Copilot agent, things like that, is really going to mean that people are going to find very specific use cases for them. It's going to really harness it. And I think one of the things so far for Copilot, there's a lot of people that are not really sure what Copilot can do. They've seen examples and things like that, and maybe not necessarily getting the best out of it. Whereas I think this agents flavor of Copilot is really going to kind of push that kind of down specific pathways, which is going to really help people adopt Copilot in general.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think every single session that I went to that was kind of Copilot based and around Copilot Studio, everyone kind of reiterated the thing around the agents, creating and managing connections to Copilot, all designed to kind of do repetitive tasks and, transform business processes really, especially around the autonomous agents as well. That was announced, I think, in October this year for like sales and finance and the supply chain and other professionals. So this is all just kind of, again, just getting started, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. So.
Yeah, definitely. And just going back to that kind of security piece, Rob, question for yourself is, does the new Copilot control system that got announced at Ignite play a key role in managing and securing that data that we were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the chief information officers, CTOs, any IT professional really, they're going to be at the epicenter of AI transformation. So Microsoft have really had to go back and think about what tools that they can introduce to empower every IT team to kind of deploy this at scale. And the Copilot control system, wrapped in with things like your data protection, intelligent grounding of the enterprise data, whilst respecting the organization's access controls that have been put in place. We had announcements of the SharePoint management tool, those features being introduced in for free with customers that already had the Copilot license. So that again is like a massive game changer. We could probably be discussing that later on in the call, and then just other management controls, to govern access and the usage of Copilot agents, which has just been talking about, visibility into the agent status, the life cycle, and then the additional features that have gone into like all of the measurement and reporting. So again, customers that have got the Copilot for Microsoft 365 are going to get the Copilot analytics at no additional charge, and that's going to provide a really good out-of-the-box experience to kind of measure the Copilot adoption, the business impact. You'll be able to customize the reports and just get a deeper analysis really on how Copilot's affecting the business. And then that leads on to like the Copilot business impact report, which I think is probably the most interesting piece really, because when we're speaking to decision makers and Copilot at the moment, we seem to be introducing it to directors and people high up in organizations. The one thing they want to know is what impact it's going to have on their business, and aligning their like key performance indicators across the departments, and how Copilot is helping is going to be a real game changer for Copilot to sell itself really. So yeah, I think it's going to have a massive impact. And now that we're, as Jay was saying, we're on that kind of the evolution part of it and more companies are adopting it, these tools were an absolute must to kind of solidify that platform and give people the proper control.
Definitely. I think that's the kind of piece what we seem to be at now, that everyone's kind of gone through that phase of the excitement of Copilot and AI and things like that. And now they want to implement it. And now we need to see proper security frameworks around all of that to make sure that it's properly set up. And we'll go into it a little bit more later on, but there's been other kind of admin kind of tools which are basically have been announced at Ignite, which is showing that Microsoft are taking it seriously, that they're hearing people's feedback saying, yeah, all of this is great and fantastic, but we need more tools, we need more help, we need more frameworks to make sure all of this is properly secured.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jay, just back onto the Copilot agent side of things then. So I say, I was mentioning before about there's different flavors of these agents, which are kind of coming down the line. And what I mean by flavors, they're kind of targeted at specific things like project management and things like that. But are there any examples where Copilot agents are autonomously solving business challenges?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two examples I gave on the, I believe it's in the keynote, that were I thought that were fantastic. So the first one was the facilitator agent that lives inside of Teams, and its kind of goal and purpose is to take the admin out of your meetings. So in terms of minute taking and notes and stuff of that nature, the agent's there, it's doing that in the background for you. You don't have to nominate someone at the top of the call, or it's someone's specific role. It's just there, built into the environment where your meetings are already taking place. And for me, I think that's just, once that's rolled out for organizations, it's going to be kind of a game changer in a way that you'll so very quickly use it. It'll be part of your day-to-day process, and you'll kind of almost take it for granted. Whereas atypically now, we've either had someone in the room doing that for you, or you've farmed it off to kind of other services. So I think that's going to be absolutely fantastic. And I think one of the most kind of impressive examples I saw at the talk was an interpreter agent. And what this did was, in real time, it took someone speaking, I believe it was in Spanish, translated that into English. And in real time, that presented back an AI generated conversation, but that conversation was also in my voice. So if it was translating me from English to French, it would have my voice, my tone, my inflection, all in French. And I just thought that was a fantastic representation of the kind of things these agents can bring to the fore for us in our day-to-day activities.
Yeah. I mean that's essentially what agents is going to be doing, is bringing that kind of pre-built knowledge of a topic to the forefront for people to be accessing with Copilot. Mm-hmm. So, Rob, what should IT administrators take? So, what steps should IT administrators take specifically to ensure that organizations are getting ready for Copilot?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'd recommend is the deploying Copilot for Microsoft 365. I think it's in 4 chapters, it's called. So it's part of the Microsoft Copilot deployment toolkit. One of the first things I recommend is kind of getting the governance right. So that's going to entail assessing your data readiness, really, and your information architecture, ensuring the data's accurate, well organized, and accessible. So obviously, Copilot relies on a high quality data to function effectively. It can only kind of bring to the table what it can actually access, or the data that's been built into the Copilot Studio app, for example, if you're looking at enterprise data. Other parts would be sort of strengthen your security and compliance practices. So all customers anyway should be looking at their baseline security, but now's the time to kind of review and update your security measures, implementing information security around sensitive information, ensuring all the compliance and relevant regulations and policies are being adhered to. Then you've got kind of the second chapter, which is all about implementation and intention. So you've got to identify key areas where Copilot can add the most value in the business. This could include automating some of those routine tasks, enhancing data analysis, or improving communication within the business. All of these things that are happening day to day. Can Copilot come in and save little bits of time in each example? Because that's going to really drive that initial high impact use cases for the business. I think chapter 3 was like driving adoption to capture value. So develop a solid communication plan, create communication plan to inform the users about the upcoming changes and provide them all the resources and support that they need. And then obviously then go ahead and build and launch that adoption plan. So, user training sessions, invest in things like the Viva learning modules. I think Microsoft Digital, which is basically the IT department of Microsoft, they used Viva specifically to deliver the Copilot internally to like 300,000 global users, and they were able to get this off the ground pretty quick. And Microsoft is not all tech people, it's going to have what every other business has, HR and all that kind of thing. And then I think chapter 4 was just building a foundation for support. So make sure that you're extending and optimizing that adoption, based on measurements, staff feedback, and listening really, and just going back and tweaking that adoption plan. So those are probably the main things really I would concentrate on when you want to roll Copilot out across the organization.
I think one of the other things as well, and it's just been mentioned here as the question in the Q&A section, which I think is quite timely. Someone asked any recommendations for a baseline AI policy, and actually AI policies are something which everybody I'm speaking to, all the organizations, I think less than 1% of them seem to have some form of AI policy in place. Mm-hmm. I mean, the question there, any recommendations are based on AI policy, the ones which have had them in place have had Copilot write the first draft of the AI policy anyway. So it's almost like AI writing its policy on itself. But I think it's really important that we have these policies in place, because in my opinion, I think the way AI is going is kind of like that kind of bring your own device type of thing, where unless you specify how you want people to use it and not to use it, people are going to find their own solutions. If you don't provide them Copilot and you don't provide them with a governed kind of AI policy of how they should be using it, they'll often find their own thing. They'll use ChatGPT. They'll be putting sensitive customer data out there into external AI products and things like that, which are not centrally governed and secured by your organization. And it's the same as when we saw cloud storage first appearing. If you didn't provide them something like SharePoint or OneDrive to store their documents, people often use Dropbox or some third-party thing that they can share documents with. So yeah, I definitely think that we need to be thinking about AI policies and having proper structure in place. Mm-hmm. So Jay, just to go to the kind of your kind of neck of the woods, which is the obviously business applications, Power Apps, things like that. Do you see that Copilot will Copilot in Power Apps transform the way that business applications are being built?
I think transform, maybe not, but I think what it will do, it's a new tool for developers and makers to really get started a lot quicker. There was a lot of great examples where basically using prompts to kind of kick off the initial build of your applications. So that would, I need an application that we're going to use for a booking system, and it's got users and bookings and whatever else is required. And you could provide this as a prompt tool in natural language, hit go. And what Copilot is able to kind of do, and what they've been extending on for kind of the last year, is really create a solid foundation and base for you to build your business application from. One of the evolutions that we saw of that within the presentations was AI generative repairing and modifications of solutions, which are a lot more better than what's in place now. So you can basically interact with the Copilot Builder chatbot and say, right, I need to make a modification to this table. I need to make a change to this part of the Power App. And in real time, you're able to make those changes very, very quickly. And what will be fantastic for a developer and a maker there is, let's say you've got a laborious task that you've got to add the same column on 10 different tables. That might take you a lot of time. But if you just type that as an AI prompt and then hit go, the robots, as I affectionately call them, will make those changes for us a lot quicker. And what that means is we can get rid of the kind of, nuts and bolts boilerplate work that we spend a lot of time doing and we need to get right, because that's fundamentally the foundations of our application, but it's low skill. And we can pivot our developers and we can pivot our knowledge workers into building onto the applications where we need them, which is those tricky business specific business rules or ways of working that are not necessarily easily expressed in an AI prompt. So one of the biggest takeaways for me was this kind of way of looking at, copilots and AI is picking up all of that boring, monotonous work, that repeatable work. What can we get the machines to do that is going to take us away and get us to focus on the things that are really going to add value and benefit and get the most out of our employees and people?
Couldn't agree more. A question just dropped in here, and probably Rob is probably best you answer this one. Is it possible for half of an organization to use Copilot and be licensed, and the other half not having it? This is coming from a non-profit that's worried about cost implications.
Yeah, so you, just like with 365 licenses or additional licenses, you can choose how many you purchase and how many users you want to benefit from the technology. You could start off with 10 to 15 licenses, for example, and then roll that across the organization, when you see fit or when the budget is able to provide that. It's not like a one all or nothing approach. Yeah, you can definitely do that.
I mean, it's something that I've been speaking to a lot of people about recently, is kind of having phased approaches to Copilot. You don't need to have a big bang of every man and his dog's got a license overnight. I've been talking to people about different types of pilots, essentially. One being almost like what I call the personal pilot. So there's usually one or two people that have heard of Copilot, and before they even start getting battered with questions from people about what is Copilot, they want to do a personal kind of review of it. And that's the kind of personal pilot. So maybe somewhere between 2 and 5 licenses that you might get to have a little go. But the one thing I would say with that is don't get fooled by getting siloed with what Copilot does. Because usually when I'm saying personal pilots, it's usually an IT department. It's usually a handful of IT guys get hold of it, play around with it, and they look at it through the lens of IT and what they are going to be using it for. And they forget about what HR is going to use it for: IT, finance, marketing, sales. They forget what all of those guys are going to use it for. So it's good to kind of be ahead of the game with that kind of personal pilot, but obviously keep in mind that there's other teams out there. And that takes you to the next stage, which is the kind of the more wider kind of sort of departmental level pilot. And that might be you pick on a particular department and you think, okay, I'm going to get now 30 licenses and we're going to look at that specific department, learn from that department, find ways that they can save time, even if it's just starting off with 20 minutes a day or something like that. Compounds over time. It's going to save loads of sort of money in time savings.
That's how we deployed it internally as well, isn't it? We've
Exactly.
made ourselves in Valto customer zero. We've had workshops with our departments and try to understand what Copilot could do for them and what repetitive tasks can we use to reduce the time and effort that they need to do to add value. Like the consultancy department that has had a lot of Copilot training with writing reports and that kind of thing, and you don't work with the sales as well, Dougie. So
yeah, exactly. Whilst I've got you there, Rob, as well, obviously another big announcement in my world of kind of SharePoint is what's known as SAM, SharePoint Advanced Management, all about basically allowing people to improve content governance for Copilot integration. So what's your take on that? How do you think SAM's going to be sort of implemented, and what difference will it make?
Yeah, I mean, you're the expert, so I'll try and make sure I cover absolutely everything. But no, to be fair, SharePoint Advanced Management is probably one of the essential add-ons to the the Microsoft 365 stack that I would definitely consider, outside of Copilot, of course. But because now Copilot 365 includes SharePoint Advanced Management capabilities, which is going to be absolutely essential for customers to to basically govern their data at scale. So I was actually speaking to a customer when I was at Ignite, who basically spent over a year, kind of going through all of their data, doing some cleansing, tidying up, interacting with the departments. And he was kind of doing all that manually. And then, obviously the SharePoint Advanced Management announcement about it being free, he could have saved so much time. Some of the kind of capabilities, obviously, is, managing content sprawl across the tenancy. It can help reduce oversharing, so you get access to data access governance reports, You can implement like site restriction policies where content may have been overshared too much. You can then enforce site and content ownership. So you can obviously, all of your SharePoint sites and groups, you can make sure that there's an owner assigned to them, which is really critical for kind of, data governance at scale. And then there are things like, clean up unused sites with inactive site policies. You can set timeframes on cleanup activities for auto archiving with the data owners. This and all this stuff can be kind of set up in minutes as well. It's, I think previously we'd be running loads of scripts and stuff for enterprise to try and get this information. Now you can kind of get it to hand really, really quick. For those customers that may have looked at third-party tools like Admin Droid and those kind of things over the years, this really kind of brings that capability in-house, but really kind of homes in and concentrates on your, the data and the site, the lifecycle management of your SharePoint and Teams infrastructure. Because as we were saying before, AI is only as good as the data it's kind of looking at. So yeah, this is a real good move by Microsoft to include these tools. Obviously, we'll be utilizing these for customers who've already got Copilot, in terms of the assessments and the workshop engagements that we do. So it's only going to help, in my opinion.
Definitely. So Jay, just jumping back to Copilot Agents for a second. Do you see that Copilot Agents will fundamentally change how businesses are operating?
Fundamentally, yes. I think coming back to the facilitator agent, it's a prime example of something that is there that's easily picked up by a Copilot, and it can just simplify the process for everybody involved. Everyone understands the value of why we need to take notes, understands why we need the minutes, understands the challenge it can be that, Rob might take fantastic minutes when we're doing a chat like this, but if you leave it to Jay, it might be a bit of a scribble on the back of a notepad. But if we could add that over to an AI agent, we know we're going to get consistent quality and we're going to get consistent value out of that across the board. And that's going to kind of just take away a concern that might seem trivial, but in the long run, that can impact hundreds of projects and many, many meetings. So, yeah. I mean, that there is absolutely that chance of fundamentally changing the way that businesses work. And I think the exciting part about this is it's not for me or Rob or for you, Dougie, to sit in there saying it's going to be 200 different things. It's going to be how businesses look at these options and go, oh, that could help us here, could help us there. What works for Valto might be different for another business. And I think that's what's really exciting, because it's just going to open doors and opportunities across the board for all organizations.
Definitely. I think one of the other kind of agents which was announced was around, I can't remember the exact naming of it, but it was like employee self-service or something like that.
That's all right. Yeah.
And I think that stood out to me, and I thought, wow, that's like, it's basically going to put someone's like SharePoint on steroids, because it means now that all the kind of documents, your policies, procedures, all those different things like in there. I mean, we know internally at Valto, onboarding and things like that, it can be an absolute nightmare, and we've automated things to the teeth, but there's still gaps where people have questions, and it still relies on people to answer those questions. Whereas with this employee self-service, we can use that now to point at a big stack of information, all these little questions we didn't quite think of, someone can ask, and the information's there. It's not like we're coming up with information off the top of our head. The information's there, it's just we need to surface it. And I thought, when I saw that, I thought that's probably going to be the biggest, out of all the organizations I know and work with, that I think that agent is going to be the biggest game changer to how things are getting implemented.
No, definitely. Absolutely. As soon as I saw that one, I was like, oh, that takes our company handbook, which is fantastic, but it's also 1 million pages long, and that is something that staff can go, right, I have this very specific question about my leave, or around paternity, or around carryover for holiday, because we're at the end of the year, so that's very prominent at the moment, and rather than needing for our guys and girls to actually kind of dig into that, find that. You can just go to the self-service agent, just ask that question and it will pop right up for them. And I think it's just removing those tiny barriers that it's like at the minute it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, and now it's just one step. You go to the agent, you ask it the question, it returns you what you need, you're back to work, you're doing whatever you need to do. So that's absolutely agree with you there, Dougie.
Brilliant. So Rob, just going back to some of the sort of points we were talking about earlier about security, is the new security infrastructure effective at preventing oversharing of sensitive content across Microsoft 365?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of it's based on Microsoft Purview, which, Satya Nadella was basically saying this is the kind of announcement of Ignite, really. A lot of these kind of new features are actually based on existing product sets, which, are already industry leading in security and compliance. So things like the data loss prevention, the cloud native solution that's already, in wide use in the Microsoft 365 stack. It's obviously got now's got new Copilot features. So in terms of the capabilities, we can ensure that content with sensitive information is not summarized by Copilot or processed by Copilot for grounding the data, so DLP can intervene and kind of stop those things. We've got additional features under kind of data security and posture management, or DSPM as they now call it. They do like an acronym, and those have already gone into public preview. So you're going to have things like data security posture management, data at rest analytics, data transportation policies, the ability to kind of label and classify data from a Copilot perspective. And then obviously all of the features around the insider risk management. So all the kind of the usage indicators, and there's new policy templates that have gone into it to kind of find, risky detections. Those could be, somebody lowering the classification of an AI, of a sensitivity label on a document, and then pointing Copilot at it and saying, can you summarize the document? So things like that are just going to be built into, these risk prompts, which is quite cool. And then you were talking about trying to find holes in your security and gaps in your policies. You can now use Copilot to kind of describe what policies you've already got in place across the DLP. So you can say, Copilot, what's inside this DLP policy, and it will kind of come back with what governance and what interventions it's going to do. But it might also identify any gaps as well, which is quite good if you're going to be audited. And then, just the better security support for like SOC teams and things with Defender XDR integration. But yeah, for me, that this is probably the biggest update across all of the Microsoft 365 stack, and it's going to have a huge impact on helping people, secure data effectively with this sensitive information in 365.
I think that's it. I think gun to someone's head of knowing what content has been overshared at the moment is really challenging to understand and actually to actually get that information out. And I think that's what leans into this kind of fear of things like Copilot, of not knowing what content shared with who and where and things like that. So all these kind of additional tools which are coming out to help dig into where is content being overshared, I think is going to alleviate a lot of those concerns and help people become less kind of fearful of, well, who has access to this information and where is it being shared.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So Jay, how can organizations measure the return on investment of adopting Copilot agents?
So just kind of coming off the back of what we were just talking about there, about making sure that we've got management and controls in place and making sure the right data protection is there. As part of all these releases, they are releasing the Copilot control system. And so that gives you a lot of visibility in and around all of those elements and pieces. As part of that, there's also going to be the Copilot analytics. And within there, that's where you're going to be able to kind of really review at a high level the key things that are going to matter to your kind of business leaders. So that will be kind of, Copilot readiness, the adoption, the impact that Copilot is having across your organization. And these are going to be out of the box reports provided by Copilot Analytics, but it doesn't just stop there. What Microsoft are providing you is the ability to create your own kind of set of insights, kind of built on top of Viva Insights, and within that you can generate what they're terming a Copilot business impact report based off of your metrics, your measures, the things that matter to your business, and using those measures you can then kind of validate, are we getting what we need out of this? We're investing X amount of pounds, X amount of resources into Copilot for our organization. It's not like that you're just left in the wind. There's out the box, and there's this capability for you to really kind of build on that rich data and pull out the metrics that are key to you. So the long and short is, Dougie, is yes, you can measure it.
Brilliant. Again, I think that's something which is holding people back, is this kind of fear of, well, actually, what is the return on investment? Like, is it worth the money that's going into it? And it's always a bit of a hard sell to tell people when you say it's £25 per user per month for a Copilot license, for example, without being able to then say, but you're going to save X amount of money. Now, I know we do a lot of good work to work with organizations to help them work that out, but it's always a bit scary until you've got facts and figures to know this is what I'm actually going to get back. Previously, it felt like a bit of a leap of faith, whereas I think now, again, we're going to be sort of squashing some of those concerns and helping people actually understand what the return on investment is going to be.
Exactly, and just to kind of round off on that, there's a concern around cost. They wanted to make a big deal around with the insights piece being provided at no additional charge of the Copilot Analytics, and that was going to start, very early in 2025. So they're really trying to kind of build that confidence and build that sentiment where businesses and leadership can really buy into Copilot. It's not just going to be implement it and you'll figure it out. They want to give you that data. They want to give you that insight.
Exactly. I mean, just going on from there as well, Rob, we're talking about things which people are hesitating, or reasons why people might hesitate to sort of jump into Copilot and some of these option tools. So would you recommend organizations should be hesitating about AI adoption because of security concerns, or is there anything that they should be reconsidering now with this guidance coming from Ignite?
Yeah, and I understand the concern and and hesitation customers have about adopting any new technology. I mean, I remember when Microsoft 365 started to become really popular, and customers were migrating emails to Exchange Online and adopting Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, and enterprises were kind of, especially large on-prem houses, were locking down access to like OneDrive and things like that. So definitely understand the concern. I think at the foundation of AI adoption, you should have that solid security posture. So, and all organizations should have a solid baseline configurations anyway, with best practices in place for data security, even like DLP and information protection, stuff that kind of goes with their, the regulations that they have to follow every single day. And anything after this, you've got Microsoft solutions partners like us, really, who can, guide you on the way forward of implementing all of this new shiny tech. Microsoft themselves, they announced the new AI-centric management tools through, Purview, what we've just been speaking about. There's been a huge increase in like AI and Copilot deployment toolkits from Microsoft. You've only got to go to the admin center, and within 3 clicks, you get really good documentation on, how you can implement this safely and securely. And I think data is one of those things that everyone kind of avoids, especially in maybe the more technical department in IT. So, having an excuse to maybe address some of that stuff now anyway is probably good. Organizations can get everything in order and make sure data is structured well. So I understand the hesitance, but this is stuff that we should all be doing anyway. So for me, we shouldn't just put a block on the AI, otherwise we're going to fall behind.
Definitely. And I think it's always kind of, even if it's just baby steps moving in the right direction, there's plenty of things. I mean, I'm going to come on later on at the end to talk a little about some of the kind of free assessments and things like that Valto are offering, and there's funding from Microsoft for all sorts of great things that Valto can help you access. But it's all just baby steps. It's making sure you don't just sort of stick your head in the sand and think, oh no, this doesn't apply to us, this isn't going to change us, because it's almost like, come back to this phrase that people have said in the past before, that they think AI is going to come and take their job, and it's like, well, it's not. But someone who knows how to use AI better than you is going to come and take your job. And it's the same for kind of at the organization level. Your competitors who are using these tools are going to be able to be more efficient, which means more man hours, which means they can produce more things than you can do just manually without AI. So I think with all these kind of things, it's kind of making sure you're taking baby steps in the right direction to enable that kind of journey to at least start. So Jay, in terms of, we're talking about kind of Copilot agents and things like that, how do you see that the announcements from Ignite impacting the way that Valto work?
Yeah, I think we already kind of touched on the kind of the self-service stuff. Absolutely, I can see that being, once that's enabled and in our tenant, that'll be something that will help a lot of kind of like, day-to-day activities. I think one of the most interesting ones, and we've really got to get under the covers of it to kind of see how it's working, but conceptually is the project manager agent. That again looks like it can take away a lot of that legwork about kind of setting up a project, moving tasks, sending out reminders, making sure we're tracking progress on tasks correctly, pushing out notifications and status. If we can get that embedded and working as advertised, I think that would really kind of help our project management team take a lot of that kind of laborious work out of the role and free them up to kind of deal with the challenges that every PM faces, and I think if we can get that embedded, that'll be absolutely fantastic for us at Valto.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. In fact, actually, during Ignite and as it was going on, I took a screenshot of when they were announcing all of this stuff, and I sent it to our head of PMO, our head of project management, and literally was like, her response was, yay, exclamation mark. Because literally since Copilot was first announced, from the day one, she has come to us and said, can it book our meetings? Can it book meetings for us? Can it book meetings? And that was like the number one thing that she wanted it to get, because you can imagine at Valto, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of meetings, a lot of experts in a lot of different areas, and we have to get the right people in the right room for the right conversations and things like that.
Exactly.
And it's a full-time job just managing all of that and booking the meetings and getting the people in the right place. So yeah, I think that's going to be like a fundamental change for Valto, is that this project manager agent is going to, and we've seen examples of it booking meetings and things like that, and it's, without getting too boring and techie, it's aware of the hierarchical structure of an organization as well. So you can even use prompts, things like book a meeting with my line manager or something like that, and it knows who reports to who and things like that and whatever. So it can use that human language to sort of also sort of book meetings using sort of those kind of prompts. So Rob, I mean, it sounds like there's loads of security kind of updates and features and tools and stuff like that coming down the line, but how can businesses measure the success of their Copilot security implementations?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess with the security stuff, there's things like the secure score components are not going to go away. So you're still going to have those, good measurements on your tenant posture, if you like, which is all going to be relevant to AI and Copilot. So you've got the Microsoft Secure Score, which covers the overall tenant security over time, benchmarks the tenant against similar organizations, that dives into like device data and applications specific. You've also got the Secure Score for identity, located in the Entra portal for identity related configurations. That's a huge part of an organization's kind of security there as well. And then you've also got the compliance score, located in the Purview portal. So the compliance score obviously measures your progress towards completing the recommended actions that help reduce the risks around data protection and regulatory standards. And they're only going to get bolstered more with all of the new features that have been kind of released in Ignite this year. Those kind of specific configuration items are going to find themselves in the secure score pretty quick, and you'll be kind of benchmarked against those. Then you've got like the Defender for Security portal, so things like exposure management, attack service, and exposure insights, things like threat analytics. So you've already got the foundations for reporting that data. It's just going to be updated with all of the new features that have been released, really. And then I guess with organizations who might struggle with all these implementations and the ongoing support for all these products, Valto have tailored services and pre-built engagements to tackle those things specifically. That's what kind of a lot of my team does, really, probably all of that, to be honest. So there's plenty of help and guidance around ensuring that your business is going to meet the security standards for things like Copilot and AI.
So Jay, we've talked a bit about Copilot agents and things like that, and one of the questions which quite often comes up just in Copilot in general is about the how customizable it is. So can developers enhance Copilot agents functionality to address very specific business needs?
Yeah, so I think one of the great things in all of the announcements that Microsoft pretty much did was there was, we can start with out the box, and then we can go all the way to kind of customizing it exactly to however you need. And depending on which kind of vertical you're talking about in their technology, there's different ways and means in doing that. I think for kind of the Copilots, what we want to be talking about is Copilot Studio. So that is, that has been out for over a year now, just over a year, and there's been a number of massive announcements of like capability and functionality within the Copilot Studio to help support kind of creating and modifying agents, and really that is to allow you to create the agent that you need. So we can have a Valto bot that does Valto things and figures out our challenges and our problems, and answers the questions that we need answering, and can automate our business processes. And I think the big thing for all organizations, I touched on this earlier, is it gives all organizations the opportunity to kind of build the AI that they need, rather than just relying on a chat GPT that's over here, or just relying on a generalized Copilot or whatever it might be. You can build the one that answers the questions, deals with the problems that you've got in hand, and Copilot Studio is the place for you to do that and create that specific Copilot that solves all your problems, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Just conscious of time, maybe just do one or two more questions each. So Rob, are there any specific tools that you'd recommend in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center that you'd recommend for monitoring Copilot's impact and usage?
Yeah, so the Microsoft Admin Center experience got an update at Ignite this year, so they were really pleased with what they kind of had to show the partners and customers. So there was basically new tools to interpret, Copilot usage across the organization's tenant, across enabled users versus active users. As I mentioned before, the Microsoft Copilot dashboard now includes Viva Insights for Copilot licensed customers. And in there, you've got things like adoption scores across various apps and user groups. There's now like a new impacts tab, which sort of brings again a new array of kind of several metrics that you can use. So things like the number of hours Copilot has assisted the user base for. It highlights the key activities that the users are using Copilot. So things like the number of emails and documents that have been generated, and Teams meetings that have been recapped and summarized. So you can really see those big, important, like heavy hitters where they're being used across the organization. And then you can connect things like insights into Copilot surveys sent to users. So if you're using things like Viva, you can ingest those all into like one area, So you got scoring across, several key indicators like, does Copilot allow me to complete tasks faster? You'll get like a percentage score from your user base. So yeah, they've really listened to customers and partners, and started to bring these information into the portal, and we can kind of view all this really quick and get some information from it, which is really important to the impact of the usage. It's also worth mentioning that they introduce a few other bits and pieces. I think the automatic license assignment to users. So if you had any licenses left over, the Microsoft tenant could determine which users would benefit the most from the remaining licenses based on AI metrics and metadata and that kind of stuff. And then there was quite a cool thing in there along with the scheduled messages for Copilot adoptions. So from within the admin portal, you could generate content and send out messages to like user groups or the entire organization to remind them about the Copilot licenses they're going to be getting, and you can brand it and customize it. So I think that was pretty cool as well. So yeah, there's plenty going on in the admin center, and I think from what I saw there, it still feels quite new as well. So it's definitely going to get better. They're going to be introducing more as time goes on.
Yeah, definitely. And again, conscious of time, so this is my last question for Jade. In fact, I'm actually just going to skip over a question. In terms of kind of getting ready and preparing for these, to take advantage of these agents and things like that we've been talking about, in your opinion, what should organizations start preparing for now in terms of getting ready for the use of these Copilot agents?
So, I mean, we've kind of touched on it a number of times. The AI and the Copilots and all that stuff, it's only as good as the data that it's working on top of. It's only as good as the permissions that you've already got in place. So first and foremost, get your data sorted out. Make sure that the stuff that you want to interrogate against and ask questions of and run business processes off the back of, make sure that's fully complete. Secondly, make sure the right people have got the right access to the right stuff. There's typically, for the last kind of 10 years been a tendency out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. It's security through obscurity. The one thing the agents will do, Copilot, whichever flavor of AI is, if you point that at your data set, it's going to shine a big shining light on it. So you need to make sure you've got all of that kind of security tied up with a bow and exactly how you need it. And that speaks to everything that Rob's been mentioning. And I think that's why, from top down, from Microsoft, everything that they're doing now, it has a security part to it, security first in everything that Microsoft are doing. And I think a lot of that is driven by kind of what AI is bringing to the table and how it kind of just opens up the treasure chest that is your data. And what that is really good, because it lowers discoverability, lowers difficulty to discoverability, should I say, lowers chances of things getting lost and missed, which is all fantastic and good. But on the other side, if wrong people have got the wrong access, you might not want to expose that data. So they're really the two biggest things: get your data right, get your permissions right, and get your security right. And I think that would be my advice to any organization looking to begin on this journey.
Yeah, totally. I think it's all going to be the preparation that goes into it is going to ensure a successful adoption of Copilot at the end of the day. So what I'm going to do is just quickly run you through a couple of things which are free at the moment that Valto are offering. So we have a Copilot free training. So essentially, if and this actually runs out within the next 2 weeks, that the funding for Microsoft runs out. So if you purchase a license, as in a Copilot license from Valto, you can get your hands on a 3-hour hands-on training session delivered from Microsoft. You do need a license though, because it's a follow-along tutorial. There's also a 15% off licenses at the moment. So when you purchase 10 licenses or more, we can offer you a 15% discount on your licenses. And I'd say all of this funding essentially runs out in December. So on those particular freebies, you need to act quickly. You can get in contact with us if you email hello@valto.co.uk. You can get in contact with us. I should also mention we're offering free Copilot assessments. So essentially, this is where Rob and his team are providing free assessments, which basically includes a free initial call. So it's a short call to understand your specific setup and needs and requirements. Then we go into an assessment focus, so evaluation of SharePoint teams, structures to ensure that they are optimized for Copilot. We also look at use cases as well. So this is probably one of the most important parts of this, is where we're identifying 5 individuals within your organization who would benefit from Copilot, and basically work with them to understand the potential use cases, ideally finding them a way of saving, say, 20 minutes a day or something like that, and then showing these use cases to other people in the organization. This all comes with a report. So you get a report generated for this, which basically gives you all summaries and findings, recommendations, including potential time savings and next steps for Copilot. And then we also offer Copilot deployments. So off the back of that, we also can offer you packages, which is essentially fully deploying Copilot for you, which comes with essentially all the essential things of communication plans, working with creating sort of champions, key stakeholders. We provide data security assessments and resolutions, as well as that training and user adoption plans. And packages start from just 2 users. So as I say, those personal type of pilots, that's fantastic for that. And then you can scale that all the way up to a full department size. Scale. So I'm just going to jump back actually to the chat and just see if there's any final questions. If you do have any questions, use the Q&A feature above. I'm just going to look to make sure that we've got all the questions answered now. Looks like we've answered all the questions now. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining today's session. We hope you found it really useful. If you did, please do let us know. We can do some more of these types of styles of webinars in the future. But yeah, the recording will be out on YouTube tomorrow, so we'll send a link out to the recording for yourselves if you want to rewatch it, or send it to any colleagues. And yeah, take a look out for any of our future webinars as well, which are upcoming shortly. So from myself, Rob and Jay, thank you for joining today's webinar.
Thanks, everyone.